used to play computer games on it. And so, yeah, a lot of computer games, just sort of spurred from that to be like, oh, maybe I can start making something like similar to that. So as a kid, I learned a little bit of HTML. And then once I learned that, I think it kind of kicked off everything else.
And for the people joining, do you mind giving a short introduction about what you're majoring in and where you go to college?
Sure. So I'm Varun Kulkarni. I'm a fourth year computer science major at Georgia Tech. My sort of concentrations of my major are more towards networks and intelligence. And so that's sort of my area of study for the last 4 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, sounds good. So how did you cultivate your interest in CS throughout high school? What extracurriculars did you participate in? Did you have any CS related internships?
Sure. So in high school, a lot of I didn't really get too deep into computer science until I took, I want to say, AP computer science.
Mhm.
The school was pretty new at the time, so I was able to take it early. I took it as a sophomore. And so from that, I also was able to get into a lot of robotics clubs. There's also something called TSA, Technology Students Association, which is kind of like a science Olympiad for technology. They have like a whole host of events like video game design, website design, meteorology, all sorts of things. And so robotics, TSA, and also just general like programming competitions that we used to do in high school. They just kept, improving my skills more and more. And so as I started to get more familiar with them, I got better at the things I like to do. And that kind of just spurred my interest from that. And then sort of from those activities, I can say I started to learn more about like programming languages, like website design from my high school competition prompted me to make my own personal website later on. So that's one example of kind of taking whatever I did in a competition and then being like, all right, now I want to add my own spin on it. And the whole project started from that.
Mhm. And the AP Computer Science course you took, was it AP Computer Science A or AP Computer Science Principles?
It was computer science A.
Okay.
It was in Java. We did a lot on graphics, a little bit of algorithms, sorting, all sorts of basic computer science algorithmic stuff.
Mhm. And so why exactly did you apply to Georgia Tech? Was there something about the college that you liked? Was it the courses or anything else?
So when I was applying to colleges, a lot of, I applied to a couple colleges in Virginia, and then I looked at other colleges out of state just to see what kind of programs they had. So I had a like very small list of top contenders, and a lot of them, the stuff they had in common, Georgia Tech included, was, really a heavy focus on having your own CS department, a very large one and a very diverse department. You see a lot of fields are studied here, from intelligence to media to like UI UX design, and like networks, like what I'm doing. And so just the ability to explore all sorts of options in the field of computer science was sort of the first like priority. And then from there, I just started to see, what kind of extracurriculars do they have? What kind of research opportunities do they have? Could I see myself joining those research opportunities, talking with those professors? And that that's kind of how I started to choose out my colleges. And eventually, that combined with the fact that I'm in Atlanta, which is a very hot developing city for technology, kind of became the perfect storm for choosing this college.
Mhm. And how many colleges were on that list you were talking about? Like, how many were you
Um,
planning to apply for?
I think I applied to, so it's been a while, but
Right.
I think I applied to around like 20-ish colleges.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
then by the time I was like very seriously considering where to go, I had a top list of about 5.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. So how did your academic stats look like? For example, SAT, ACT, your
Oh
GPA, and any
boy.
courses that you took?
So again, it has been quite a bit, like a long time. I want to say I don't remember my GPA off the top of my head, at least my high school GPA. But I did remember that at least back in like when I was in school, class rank used to be one of those things that people talked about a lot. So I want to say my class rank was roughly in the 20s or something, if we want to be like very specific.
Yeah.
SAT scores, somewhere in like the upper 1400s. I really don't remember off the top of my head, but I did take back when I was applying, they kind of switched the SAT to the new SAT. So I think my score was around 1300 or 1400.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. Sounds good. So do you find college to be as difficult as high school, or is it like more difficult for you?
College is, so I think it really depends on how much you're trying to put into it. So if you're taking a lot of courses, it will get difficult pretty quickly. And if you're going to do things outside of school, it also kind of interacts with your time a lot. So one of the biggest things that I find challenging when I studied here was time management, because I would start to get involved in a bunch of extracurriculars, or you'd be like, oh, that research opportunity looks really interesting. Can I put some time into it? And for that reason, you would when I like started to get more interested in things outside of school, it would be harder to focus on my actual classes. And so that was sort of the biggest challenge that I've been dealing with and continue to kind of work around while I'm at school. Overall, it's definitely more difficult than high school, just because the content you're learning is extremely specialized. It's also at a much higher level than, say, AP Computer Science. So you really dive deep, and that means you get to specifics, you get to a lot of math, and sometimes there are lessons that are not very interesting. Sometimes there are lessons that are very, very interesting. So it's kind of a wide variety of topics that you end up learning.
Mhm. Sounds good. And there's a lot of middle and underclassmen in high school in this meeting. And what specific advice would you give them?
Specific advice to underclassmen. I would say you're probably, I mean, if you're going to go to, say, computer science related, college, if that's something you want to make out of your career, getting interested early is good. Trying to find ways that you can learn how to program, learn how to, make a small project that you can put or on your college app or on your resume, or really anywhere that you have a public, profile. That's really good, because that way you're starting to learn those concepts early. And that's something you can demonstrate when you talk to colleges or when you ask about programs. And the other thing is, I know a lot of students in high school, myself included, they toured colleges before they made their final decision. And so a huge part in knowing whether you'll fit in or whether you'll really love going to Georgia Tech or Urbana or Purdue or Harvard, MIT, whatever, is asking good questions, asking the students around there to be like, I was interested in this. What kind of work do you do? Do you like it? How do freshmen get involved in this kind of work? And just seeing if that's an environment that you think you would be like fitting in well.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. And we have a question in chat. Were you more into Java and algorithms in high school? And if that's correct, what made you go for networks at Georgia Tech?
So Java and algorithms, it's not that I was into them per se, more as like that was what they taught us. Your very first Java course will be, write hello world in Java. And then, a couple months later, your assignments will start to look like, implement this algorithm, which is like, a basic sort, or possibly something related to drawing on the computer screen. And so those are fundamentals that I think like built up my knowledge of CS just in general, and those are more transferable skills. So even if I do something in networks uses the C programming language, but those concepts from Java will transfer over and allow me to make more network related stuff. So those are fundamentals. What really made me opt for a more networking route, I think, was honestly, I chose networking as a concentration pretty early on in my college, like I think in my freshman year or second semester, just because I had done a little bit with networking in the past and sort of researched a little bit about it in the past. And then as I got into upper level courses like my systems and networks and my like core networking one class, I really found like a love for the field. So I think it's kind of like you choose something that you're mildly interested in, and then as you take more courses, you start to like love learning it. There's a sort of excitement to learn something new about it.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And we'll now be taking questions in the chat. So go ahead and ask anything related to like high school, middle school, and I guess college.
Yeah, so I actually have a question of my own. So, did anybody help you on your journey throughout high school or throughout your college career?
Sure. There were a lot of people, teachers in high school, especially those who were in industry before they started teaching, are very knowledgeable. My computer science teacher, I had him for an intro CS course and an APCS course. And it's one of the like sort of, I value him as one of my like the best teachers for like that has taught me CS as like a introductory subject, because he not only would teach what was in class, but then he'd be like, hey, let's show you something, you know, out of the box that's different from class that'll get you really excited. And so when you have teachers like that, that, you know, went out of their way to show you something different, it's kind of like a feedback loop. They show you something really interesting, you start asking questions, they show you more interesting stuff. And then just through that feedback loop, you start getting more interested in CS or math or history or whatever it is. So my CS professor or teacher in high school, some of my math teachers in high school were very, they explained things well, and they just kind of made things more intuitive. So it kind of drove my interest into those fields a little more. I don't know if we have any questions in chat at all.
Yeah, we have one more. Would you recommend Georgia Tech for someone who wants to pursue MBA after science? Does Georgia Tech have the right combination of MBA programs?
I really actually don't know too much about their business school. We do have quite a big business school. And I know a lot of people who study business as an undergraduate degree. But I haven't really looked too much into their MBA program because my interests are more in like Master's of Science, probably in computer science. So I wouldn't really know. I do think like their website is pretty informative. They do have a very comprehensive list of courses. So that's a good place to find more information. And I think the advisors are generally like pretty much like they should have some sort of contact link on the College of Business page to get more information about the school.
Mm-hmm. And I also have a question of my own. How important is it to have a sport that you're dedicated to on a college application?
A sport, okay, like a varsity high school sort of sport.
Yeah.
I only did varsity tennis for a year, and then I kind of started prioritizing school, prioritizing robotics, a couple other things. The college application process, in all honesty, they don't really tell you, you know, we're looking for X. It's kind of a blend of different things that gets you accepted into college. So I think having a sport helped in that, you know, you saw this individual as not just someone who codes all day or does math all day. They do things to keep themselves active. They keep a pretty like healthy balance. And so that's probably one small factor. There could be many others.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Varun, I have a question. You have done well, like going to like one of the top computer science school in US. So what were you doing in eighth or ninth or 10th grade with respect to computer science? This is not like I'm trying to compare, but trying to see like how was your trajectory. You gave an idea about your computer science course and all, but as an 8th or 9th grader, where were you exactly?
So let's
if you remember. Oh, it's a past life.
No. 8th or 9th, I specifically remember 8th or 9th. If you know the first robotics competition series, by about 8th or 9th grade, I think we had kind of upgraded our team from like FLL to FTC. And I think that was the first time that I'd coded in C, like coding for the robot. So I was doing that for a while. That was a FTC is a robotics series where instead of doing Lego robotics, you're now upgrading your system to Lego like computer with metallic metallic hardware, radio sensors, all sorts of stuff like that. And so I was doing that for that was like a very big majority of my extracurriculars. And then other things I did technically in 8th or 9th, 10th grade, probably the TSA I talked about, Technology Student Association. I did that for, I think, 2 years, one in 8th, one in 9th. And we both did, in both of those competitions, I think we placed in the state and one we placed in the national. So like, I kind of was exploring different areas at that point. Robotics was one of them, website design, video game design, even a little bit of algorithms just from class, from APCS. So just kind of getting my foot in the water everywhere.
Okay, and you think that FTC and all helped you in your college admissions too?
I think it was honestly a pretty strong candidate for my college thing, because the big thing is
specifically that extracurricular of FTC, did it help you in like putting in your essay and all?
I talked a little bit about it in my essays. I remember a huge part is I had done first robotics has multiple levels of competition. I think throughout all those levels, I had been in the first competition series for about 6 or 7 years. So having that consistency was important as well.
Okay. And how do you see yourself now, like as a career? You're finding like job opportunities and all, like for kids of all of us who are listening to you. We read, we hear, but as you are like right there in the pick of the things, how do you see like commercially your career opportunities as you are still graduating?
So career opportunities, the job market is pretty competitive. That's kind of an objective statement. I know people who are able to get into Microsoft. I know people who are able to get into Google. And there are other people at Georgia Tech who are like intelligent. They're fantastic and they're great to be with. So I have all those opportunities out for me as well, but it's just a question of like, I still don't know what I could, like, if you ask me, like, do you see yourself in Microsoft in 5 years? I couldn't tell you whether that was the case or not, because I don't really know what exactly I want to do for technology. And so I'd say that the opportunities are not limited, but they are competitive.
Okay, but there are a lot of those, right?
There are a lot of them, yeah. Okay. People that I know they're going to like Facebook AI. I know other people who are still doing robotics that'll try to go to like Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. A couple other people that I know will go towards like the startup route. What can we do with a limited funding that could get bought out later, for example. So there's a huge spectrum of, and they just keep growing because, the moment someone comes out with a new research paper about some ML model, all the companies will want to use it, which means they'll want people to code it up and to interact with it, put it into their product line. So
okay, that's good to know. That's actually great to know. And going back to my earlier question, like say someone like me who like is a high school student, I'm not a state level or national level award winner or champion in something. How do colleges look at someone like that? So the guy is like good in studies, he's has put all the efforts, used the resources available in the school, has done like volunteer work to extracurricular activities and all, but he's not a FTC kind of a state champion or someone into robotics who is into national TSC or something. So is it like really bad on my resume?
I don't
because
think
not everyone would.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad. I have a strong feeling that your academics in high school are sort of the first thing that someone will look at. Like similar to how your resume is the first thing someone looks like at your job application, I think the transcript is probably the first thing a college looks at. And then they say, you know, okay, this guy, reasonable GPA, does his work, has decent grades. Let's see what else he's done. And then as long as you have a genuine interest, you know, I think colleges will like consider you as a strong candidate, especially if you've been studying well. It's very similar. It has some parallels to jobs applications where it's like, even if your GPA isn't that great, if you have a lot of internships or a lot of projects, then they might consider you. It's a very similar thing in the college application space. They probably just consider your academics a little more.
Okay. So in case you have to broadly put a percentage on GPA versus, is it hard?
It's a hard question because they consider everything.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's like when I used to apply, at least when I used to be in my like junior or senior year, I remember I took a very like hard stance of like, make sure you do well in school. So that might have helped me. Like that probably helped me. That probably brought my GPA up in high school, but I don't know how it would have been, you know, had that not been the case. I didn't know how important the other end factors would be versus just one GPA bump, you know?
Okay, gotcha.
So it's a very holistic picture. You kind of want to be your best at everything that you can, put everything out there so that they can see, you know, your whole picture, and then that's how they make a decision.
But as you said, the first grading thing would be your transcript, right? Your grades.
Again, I don't know. I don't have a peek into the process, but I would assume so.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Varun, one question from my side. You mentioned Raytheon. I never thought of like how IT and computer science can be diversified, but that's a good segue. Instead of just focusing on networking and all this typical software development, seems like if someone is targeting Raytheon and all, most likely they're gonna end up doing the robotics. Is that how it is?
I mean, it's like, Raytheon probably does more than robotics, right? I know Raytheon, like the example for Raytheon comes to me pretty quickly because in the first robotics program, they were a huge sponsor. And I also remember going to I think a robotics fair or something, and they had one of those really cool like arm things where you could like sit in the gondola and they would like turn you around and stuff. So which makes me think that they're heavily focused on robotics, but they probably do other things too. I mean, robotics is like, you know, put into many different areas. So it's not just like, you're not just building some fancy robotic arm, you're probably using it for some other application.
Right. And how this program is structured, let's say you're going into college now, can you decide like, let's say your goal is to end up in Raytheon. So can you decide like what major you want to do? Will it be typical computer science, or there's a separate stream just to focus on Raytheon kind of work specifically for robotics?
No, I think, well, you can. So I think Georgia Tech does have a robotics minor, for example. One of my roommates is on a robotics minor. So his interests kind of lie in artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision. And so that's kind of how he chose his like train of study. But it's not like, I mean, I can't say whether he'll go to Raytheon. Like you can't really make a decision based on, I want to be at this company. You kind of make a decision more on, you know, in the future, if I were to study something, or if I were to, you know, be like the sort of point of knowledge for something, would it be computer vision? Would it be for algorithms? Would it be for networks? And that's kind of how you end up studying choosing your courses.
I think that's the kind of intent for this session, just to motivate kids in the middle school and high school so that they can start early on and try to kind of explore their potential and decide early on like where I want to end up on, right? And I'm in the same boat.
Yeah,
good insight for me, like which way I should think about, right? So,
yeah, I mean, something like robotics was huge for me because like a robotics competition is something that's like, it has a clear goal, make a robot that wins the competition. And it's just like when you have a clear goal like that, you start focusing on that and then learning about everything behind it. So like robotics, like I could have been focusing on, making like a game-winning robot, but in the background, I was learning C programming, and that later like helped me on in my networking courses, right? So it's kind of establishing a number of fundamentals, trying to choose activities, courses that kind of have that fundamental aspect, so that later on you can be like, hey, I really liked this. What can I do in college that's related to it?
I think that's the question all the kids are trying to have an answer here. Like, what should I do so that I'll be ready? Okay, this is what I want to do before I join college. So exactly, I think that's what we're trying here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, like this AI, ML, they sound very hard to me sometimes. Like I don't know what in like ninth or 10th grade a kid it could
It's
scare
not
them.
easy. Yeah.
But
AI especially.
so is it something if I want, because this field is lucrative, but like I doubt like can I make it, or if I doing some small steps, I can make it. Yes. So the small.
So yes, there are small steps, right? If you were going to go into AI, you need a knowledge of, say, algorithms, right? You need a basic knowledge of programming. And so those are like good starting points to just like
so as
learn
an
how
eighth
to
grader,
program.
as an eighth grader, I should learn something which is like basic programming,
Yeah,
Python
like
or Java. And if I'm
Python or
interested,
Java. Yeah, Python and Java are extremely good candidates for your first programming language. And if you're motivated in high school and middle school to learn programming, it's a very good starting point.
Okay.
Because it teaches you how a computer does math. It teaches you how, how a function works, for example. And those are all fundamental concepts that build on later on. So even if you don't have a mathematical background, you know how to implement something. So when you learn the math, you'll be like, hey, can I try to make a program for that? That's actually how I learned a lot of my programming. Say something like an interest calculator or like a grade calculator. I'd randomly one day be like, I want to make a program that'll calculate like all my grades for me. And that's how I learned programming.
Okay.
And
so,
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, going back to your extracurriculars, a lot of students wonder if it's better to have maybe 3 or 4 extracurriculars like closely related to what you're going to do in the future and in college, or is it like better to have several extracurriculars that might not be related to what you're going to do in the future and are like more related to like service hours and that kind of stuff?
I think it's important to have some of the latter, like the service hour stuff, just to show that you are like a holistic individual. You think about the community, you try to do some social good, but having a couple and maybe one or two that are specifically related to your major is good, especially if you're able to spend a lot of like core time and learn some things out of it. It's very good to have those. And I think even if you do something related to technology, something like a college essay is a great space to be like, I learned this. You can elaborate on your journey of learning how to code in Python. And that's something where it no longer becomes a line item on your college app, it becomes a whole story. So a good mix, 1 or 2 that aren't related to technology, just to show that you're like that you're well-rounded, that you think about the world. And then if you have other technical interests, then yeah, go for it. No one should stop you from trying to learn what you want to learn.
Yeah, sounds good. So a question in the chat is, what were your priorities, mindset, and general goals during freshman year in high school? And how are you able to balance all the activities you did, like all the extracurricular activities you did with your schoolwork?
I think my mindset was honestly, because freshman year of high school is a very different year for many people. Some people kind of already know what they want to do, and some people are like, oh my God, it's high school. It's like so different. I was definitely the latter of the two. I was like, this is a big building. There's lots of teachers. There's lots of courses. So my priority was just kind of navigating high school. The idea of going to class and doing homework, kind of meeting up with friends, trying to, get a good like network, I guess. There's not really a network. It's more like just having fun with friends. But then I did have one or two like extracurriculars, especially robotics, which I'd been doing for a while, that I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to center back to learning technology. And I think it's just kind of having a balance should be your like highest priority in high school. You shouldn't try to overload yourself with a lot of technology unless you really want to.
Yeah. So-
Thanks for that.
Oh yeah, you can go ahead.
All right, thanks. So I was the person who asked that. I'm actually a
Mhm.
current freshman in high school, and it came because right now I'm finding that there's so many things that you can do, and like you can't do all of them. So
Yeah.
that's the struggle I'm facing right now.
Mhm.
And I'm not like sure on what I want to do. So, and I'm trying to explore things, but I'm not sure how
Yeah,
to
I
do
would
so.
suggest, because it's still early on, exploring things is kind of good.
Uh-huh.
For me, like I had that, like robotics was something I'd done since middle school. So it was more of a continuation train for me, but I still explored things. Like I didn't start making my first website until freshman year
Uh-huh.
because I found out about that through like a teacher. He was like, yeah, try this. It's really fun. And so definitely like listen to your teachers. If they find something cool, like they'll tell you because they know, okay, like, you want to be a technology person, right? I can try to find one or two things that I think you can do, and suggest them to you. And then you never know. So like one of the things the teacher recommends might be something that becomes your whole career later on because you started to like it. So breadth is good. Dipping your feet in the water is good. And then eventually you'll find one or two things that are like, oh man, I love this.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so this was a really engaging conversation. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I hope you were able to learn a lot from Varun today. And yeah, we'll see you in the next meeting. If you have any questions, you can fill out the SPL feedback form. I put it in the WhatsApp group chat and it's also in the Discord server. So be sure to fill those out. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot.
All right, bye.